Did somebody say, we have a MLB slate tonight? Somebody cue that music. It's that time again, where full-time DFS pros give you what you need to succeed. It doesn't matter if you're shooting for a GPP takedown or trying to build your bankroll by hitting in cash. We've got you covered. No BS, just DFS. Welcome to On the RotoRadar with your hosts, Brittingham T and Two Minds Bluff.
Welcome to episode number 2 of On the RotoRadar, where we give you the info you need to cover your bases every Monday through Friday. I'm your co-host, Two Minds Bluff.
And Brittingham T here with you to cover the cash game aspect of today's 9-game slate. Bluff will be covering your GPP plays for the day. We've got a 9-game slate. Let's jump right into it. Our very first game, we have the New York Yankees and Masahiro Tanaka at the Baltimore Orioles facing off against Kevin Gausman. The Yankees are minus 103 favorites. The run total is 9. What are you seeing from this game, Bluff?
Well, it's a 9-game slate. It's an interesting slate because there's 2 pitchers you really like, DeGrom and Scherzer. But you can't really play them both together on DraftKings. And my favorite SP2 today is Tanaka. And I wish he wouldn't have pitched as well as he did in his last start. I actually wrote up my article that I wanted to play him in his last start, but chickened out because the wind was blowing out about 15 miles to right versus the Athletics. But there's a lot to like about Tanaka. He was one of my picks for the AL Cy Young to begin the year. And lately he has shown he's got hit hard in a lot of starts. I know that. I've seen the homers, but he's second on the slate in swinging strike percentage. He's only behind Max Scherzer. He leads the slate by a wide margin in O-swing. That means he's getting batters to swing at pitches out of the zone. He's not walking anybody. His homer to fly ball rate has just been ridiculous, and that is a lot of it's not as bad of luck as you would assume, just because the balls that have been going over the fence, they've not been going to the second row. They've been going to the 50th row. I mean, they've been getting crushed. But he showed a lot of improvement in his last start, and I think there's a lot of strikeouts to be had in this Orioles lineup. And one thing you always worry about Tanaka is he doesn't give you that huge strikeout upside that you really want. But versus this lineup, it kind of could make up for it. And there's another thing I don't usually put a lot of weight behind it. But he had a decent start versus them in 2017. But in 2015 and 2016, he faced the Orioles lineup 3 times, and he dominated them all 3 times. And there just really isn't anyone else to go to on the slate for an SP2 at a reasonable price. What are your thoughts?
I'm not interested in any of the pitching here. I know Tanaka did have a good game, but for cash game purposes, we're going to come across much better options just based on price and opportunity. It is Hitter's Park, so I am interested in some of the bats, specifically the New York Yankees. The right-hand bats facing off against Kevin Gausman, starting with Gary Sanchez, who will be hitting second. Gausman, this year alone, is allowing a .417 WOBA with 6 home runs in 31 innings. He's given up a hard hit rate of 32.7%, a fly ball rate of 31%, and he's only striking out 17% of right-hand bats. So I want my power bats for the Yankees, which is mostly the right-handed bats. Like I said, starting with Sanchez at catcher. I like Starlin Castro at second base. I like Matt Holliday at first base. And I like, if you can afford him, he's a little bit out of the cash game build just because he's expensive. But if you can get up to Aaron Judge, who should be hitting 5th today, that is a very, very strong cash game play. The Yankee right-handed bats, you'll come across a lot of them today. Most notably, second base is pretty thin, so you'll see Starlin Castro a lot. And that's about the only interest. I don't want to challenge Tanaka with any Orioles bats, but you could always play Brett Gardner just because he'll still be hitting leadoff, and he will have that RBI and runs scored and even home run upside. But for me, Yankees right-hand bats are going to be the most popular in cash, but that's it from this game for me.
Yeah, I would say just a note, I guess if I'm not playing Tanaka, you obviously don't mind Chris Davis. Tanaka loves to hang pitches over the strike zone. They get hit very far. And so his misses to Chris Davis could be launched 450 feet. Also, one thing to notice on Gosman, I'm still kind of big on him overall. And one thing, he's changed his pitch mix quite a bit this year. And his reverse splits have kind of disappeared. And I think that's actually going to be the truth over the rest of the season. And so normally we like to target right-handers versus him. And I personally think he's been a lot better versus right-handers, and I just don't have any interest in the right-hand Yankees today.
That's interesting because in cash games, you're going to run into 2 or 3 right-handed Yankee bats just because of the numbers on paper and the affordability and just kind of the slate dynamic. Obviously we'll cover that as we go through the slate here, but you're going to see a lot of those guys are going to show up in your builds because Matt Holliday he's really underpriced across the industry. On FanDuel, he's only $2,900, and on DraftKings, he is only $4,200, which is significantly cheaper than the other options. So and he's coming off a game where he hit 2 home runs, so you're gonna get a lot of people who are on him just because of the game log, but also the matchup and the fact that they're the away team. It's going to be a very popular cash game play. But that's it for that game. On to the next game. We have the Milwaukee Brewers and Junior Guerra going to New York Mets to face off against Jacob deGrom. The Mets are minus 180 favorites. The run total is 7.5. Jacob deGrom is the biggest favorite on the slate, and quite frankly, my top pitcher of the day. How about you?
Yeah, he's by far my top pitcher of the day, too. He comes at a slight discount from Max, and just a great matchup for him. There's no Braun in the lineup. Obviously, he's on the DL. There's tons of strikeouts to be had in this Brewers lineup, and I think I've said it in every article I've wrote that I think deGrom, he might win the NL Cy Young this year. For sure, he's coming in top 3. He looks completely back. He is by far, I think he's better than Syndergaard, and that may be a hot take. I don't know anymore. I mean, Syndergaard's out for a while, but I love deGrom. I think he's going to rack up 10 Ks today, and he should be able to. I don't think they're really going to get to him either. I mean, we're normally a little worried about the Brewers' offense just because they are potent, but I don't see them scoring a lot of runs in New York. I also do love all the lefties from the Mets again. Junior's always never been as great versus left-hand bats. His splits are kind of neutral, but it gives a little more power to left-hand bats, and you could go with anyone in the lineup for the Mets, Conforto, Bruce, Duda, all still hitting the ball really hard versus right-handers. How about you?
Cash games, the really only play here is Jacob deGrom. As you mentioned, he's $300 cheaper than Max Scherzer on FanDuel, and he's $1,300 cheaper on DraftKings. So just priced alone, the matchup against the Brewers at home, it's going to be one of those spots where you just take the discount off of Scherzer, and so deGrom is going to be by far the most popular pitcher in cash. So if you want to be different, you could pay up for Max, but I personally, in my builds, have been saving the money and finding an improvement in a bat. Just some of the numbers on deGrom on why he's such a good play today. At home, he's always been a staple. He has a 2.19 ERA at home. He's 4-1 on the season. He's got 7 quality starts in 10 games. He is striking out 26% of batters. The Brewers strike out 24% of the time to right-handed pitching. It's just an ideal spot. And as the biggest favorite of the day, minus 180, it's just a lock for cash games. Now, hitting-wise, I don't have anyone in this game. No one's popping. I don't want to attack Junior Guerra. This is his second start this season. He is just a neutral pitcher. There's nothing really exploitable that pops in my models. You could always play a Lucas Duda, but people are just going to play Matt Holliday in cash games at that price point. So it's something that I'm not really interested in any bats from either side here, but Jacob deGrom is by far the most popular and will be the top cash game play of the slate for pitching. Moving on, our next game, we have the Tampa Bay Rays and Chris Archer, who are at the Texas Rangers to face a guy making his Major League debut at age 32, Austin Bibbins Dirks. Now, interesting here, Chris Archer and the Rays are minus 130 favorites. The run total is tied for the highest of the day at 9.5. How are you approaching this Tampa Bay at Texas Rangers game?
Yeah, I don't normally like to pitch Archer on the road, and it's a great hitting environment, so I'm avoiding him. I know he had a group. He absolutely dominated the Twins in Target Field his last start, and I was off him on that. But have no interest in Texas, where we've seen the weather warm up, when we've seen the run totals rise. As far as Austin, I think it's actually not his debut. He's pitched 4
As
times.
a starter, I believe it's
okay.
starting
That
debut.
might
He's
be.
come out of the bullpen, but this is his major league debut as a starter. And he's
Okay.
32 years old, so he's not like a prospect or anything.
Yeah, and I looked through his minor leagues, and as you would expect, he's a righty that doesn't have a whole lot, so he struggles mightily versus left-hand bats. So much like yesterday, you have to just love every Tampa Bay batter here. Dickerson and Logan Morrison are the standouts, and then you obviously have Kiermaier, who had a monster game yesterday, and fine with Longoria, and then Souza's actually better versus right-handers anyway. Colby Rasmus, I loved him yesterday. He didn't do much, but got to go back to the well again today. I don't see any reason why. How about you?
Yeah, it's all those left-handed bats for Tampa Bay are the top targets again for cash games. We're still in the great park for Tampa Bay. They're in Texas. The opposing pitcher is he's only pitched 3 innings at the major league level, but as a long reliever this season. But against left-hand bats in those 3 innings, he's given up 2 home runs. He gave up a hard hit rate of 36.4% and a fly ball rate of 45.5%. I mean, that's such a small sample size, can't really put much stock into it. But, I mean, that's what we have to work with. So you want Corey Dickerson will be hitting leadoff. You want Kevin Kiermaier is going to be hitting second. And if you can afford Logan Morrison at first base, he, again, is a great play today. But those are the main targets for me. Have you seen Evan Longoria's price on DraftKings? Take a minute and look at that price.
Wow. I usually don't look at hitters' prices.
He went from 3,700 today to 5,100 on DraftKings.
Huh.
He has become unplayable. He's unplayable on DraftKings.
Yeah, I mean, he makes for an interesting GPP play because you kind of want this stack, and to get him, you'd have to get off all the high. Yeah, that's quite. Yeah, I hadn't noticed that. That's quite an interesting price jump.
On FanDuel, he's still 3,300, so he's very much in play on FanDuel at third base because there's not a lot of great third base spots today. So while he's not the target-handedness I'm going for, I want the left-handed bats. He fits in nicely hitting third in Texas.
Yeah, I think it looks like DraftKings gave a full bump, basically a Coors bump to all the Rays hitters in Texas. Because Souza's 5,000 too.
Oh wow, I hadn't seen Souza. So I mean that's for cash games. You're not playing Souza, you're not playing Longoria, but you will see Dickerson. You will see a lot of Kiermaier, especially after yesterday. And some people will stick in Logan Morrison. Moving on, our next game we have the Boston Red Sox and Drew Pomerantz in Chicago to take on the White Sox and Mike Pelfrey. The Red Sox are minus 145 favorites. This game is also tied for the highest run total at 9.5. We saw what the White Sox did to a left-handed pitcher yesterday. Today we get Drew Pomerantz. How are you approaching this?
Yeah, I have no interest in Pomerantz. He doesn't pitch deep enough, and against a start like this where it's going to be the same thing we've seen from the White Sox. I mean, they are literally the best team in the league right now versus left-hand pitching. And there's just no reason to go there. There's no reason I can go there anyway. I just don't think, even in a GPP, even if he is lower owned, and I think it's tough to tell. I mean, it's tough to know how much the field knows how good the White Sox are versus left-handed bats. So I assume he probably won't be on that much, but even at low ownership, I don't see any reason to go there. For White Sox bats, I don't mind, Melky, Abreu, Frazier, but they're not my favorite plays by any means. And then we go to Mike Pelfrey, who I've been stacking against all season. don't understand any reason why it hasn't worked out, but it has completely failed every time, and it's gotten pretty frustrating. I mean, I've looked at his starts, looked at his stats. I don't understand what's going on, why he hasn't blown up yet, but I still think Red Sox are my favorite stack of the day. You want the lefties a little bit more than the righties, and you know Benintendi's only 4K on DraftKings. Mitch Moreland's only 3,800. Jackie Bradley's only 4.1K. I mean, you love the stack. What are you thinking?
Well, the interesting thing about Mike Pelfrey this season is he's not been bad. He's just been average. Like, he's always projected to get blown up, and he always goes 4 or 5 innings and somehow escapes it. It doesn't make sense. But Vegas keeps telling us that he is the guy that you want to target. Boston today has the highest projected implied or team total at 5.01 runs. So people are going to be all over the Boston bats again. But Pelfrey is a ground ball guy. He allows left-handers to get it in the air a little bit more. So if I'm looking to attack in cash games as the sharp player, I'm going for Andrew Benintendi as my top play. Benintendi is going to be hitting third because Dustin Pedroia is still out, so they kind of shifted up the lineup a little bit. So you're going to get Benintendi. He's either going to be hitting third or cleanup, depending on what they do with Hanley Ramirez today. I have down third in my model, but Pelfrey's allowing a 302 WOBA, 4 home runs in 21 innings. To left-handed bats, he's giving up a 36% fly ball rate and a 40% fly ball rate, a 36% hard hit rate, and he's only striking out 15%. So if you get Benintendi hitting third at his price, he's great across the industry. He'll be very, very popular. Now, the interesting spot is if Mitch Moreland hits fifth. If Mitch Moreland hits fifth, he'll be very popular in cash games. And I don't see why they wouldn't put him against right-handed pitcher at fifth. Do you think he'll hit fifth?
Yeah, he'll hit fifth. I would.
Okay.
I think 100% he hits fifth.
Okay, he'll be popular then. See, The issue with Moreland has always been the batting order this season because he's sometimes been sixth or worse lately, and that just hasn't been a spot that pops on cash games. But if he's hitting fifth or higher today, he's very much in play.
Yeah, the also issue with Moreland is he likes to fly out to the warning track a lot when I play him.
Well, he's got a good park today. He's got a better park for left-handed power. But you're not going to see, people are going to try to jam in Mookie Betts, but to me, he's even on, you're getting a little discount on DraftKings, but to me, he's even a bit too expensive in a lot of the builds I'm making for cash games. So I don't think you're going to see a lot of Mookie Betts, but you'll see a lot of Andrew Benintendi. So just be prepared that in cash games, if you don't play Benintendi at his affordable price, you may regret that spot. But that's all I got. I'm not touching Pomerantz. The White Sox hitters, it's so difficult to understand who to play because Pomerantz has upside as a strikeout guy, but the White Sox are good against left-handed pitching. So the only guy that's really standing out for me is Todd Frazier at third base because they're, as I mentioned earlier, outside of Todd Frazier versus Pomerantz in Chicago, you've got Evan Longoria on the road at Texas. You've got Nolan Arenado, who's going to be on the road at Seattle today, who's just too expensive for his spot. You got Manny Machado, who's facing off against Tanaka. There's just not a lot of third base plays that are sticking out. So he's definitely in play. He'll be hitting cleanup. The outfield duo of Melky Cabrera and Luis Garcia, who will be hitting 1 and 2, are also in play, but they're just not making the cut, even though they're kind of mid-tier price, because you're going to have to pick and choose carefully because you're paying up for a Jacob deGrom or Max Scherzer today.
Yeah, I haven't dug deep into Frazier, but I would be a little worried about the strikeouts for him. My favorite, even though it's unfortunate he's at first base, but my favorite would be Jose Abreu just because a lot less strikeout risk with him and more power upside for me. But again, it's first base, so I understand your thoughts. Third base is much weaker, and Frazier is actually even much cheaper than Abreu. So Agreed.
Yeah, and that's exactly my thought. Is on first base you can get away with fading Abreu. Abreu is a fine play, but he's expensive. He's the second most expensive first baseman on FanDuel, and on DraftKings he is the most expensive first baseman at 4,700. It's just a tough spot to get him in. But at third base, the other options outside of Frazier, who is only 3,700 on DraftKings, and on FanDuel he's only 3,400. He's just fitting a lot of cash game builds, so you're going to run into Frazier. And I believe he has home runs in, two of his last 3 games. So he's going to be popular by the player that is inexperienced and just looks at game logs, and he's going to be popular because of the position scarcity. Our next game, we have the Detroit Tigers and Matt Boyd facing off against the Kansas City Royals and Ian Kennedy. The Royals are minus 127 favorites. The run total here is sneaky high at 9. And the Royals' sneaky team total, they are the third highest team total at 4.66 runs projected. Talk to me about the Royals being the third highest projected scoring offense today.
Yeah, I don't see him as the third highest, but I mean it's a great spot for him. I have been a Matt Boyd big fan in the past, but every stat you look at of him, he is just struggling. He's not getting first pitch strikes. He's not getting any swings and misses. His O swing is low. His hard contact rate is super high. His soft contact rate is super low. And he is getting crushed. And this Royals team, they're not great versus lefties, but Matt Boyd has just been serving it up, and they could have a monster game here. It wouldn't be my favorite stack in the world just because there isn't a ton of upside here. I mean, I like him more on FanDuel where homers aren't important. Your stacks in FanDuel, you're more looking for runs and RBIs. So I like the stack more on FanDuel, but I wouldn't hate anyone for playing pretty much anyone in this lineup. I can see Boyd continue to struggle and get a quick hook, and that Tigers bullpen is terrible. As far as the Tigers bats, I love them again today. Ian Kennedy, to me, he's looked terrible his 2 starts back from the DL. He's getting hit hard. He's getting yanked early. And that bullpen for them, the long relief bullpen for the Royals, is terrible too. I could see this game literally being a 10-9 slugfest. So it has a lot of interest for me as a game stack in GPPs. How about you?
Well, interesting you say that, especially coming off a 1-0 game last night. Tonight, a couple of things to factor in. This is the one game that has a weather issue. There's a 70% chance of rain, and the game starts about an hour after lock. So you're going to have to be careful if check forecast before locking in players here. Yeah, tonight is set up for a much more offensive explosion type outing, as the Tigers have a run total projected at 4.34, and as I mentioned earlier, the Royals third highest at 4.66. I'm looking at specifically the Royals right-handed bats. Salvador Perez is jumping off the page. On FanDuel, he's 3,200, and on DraftKings, you're getting some crazy pricing algorithm here. He has dropped down to 2,900. On DraftKings, he is going to be hands down the cash game catcher. He's going to be hitting 5th, and at that price, fade at your own risk because he's in a platoon advantage. He will have the it's just opportunity for RBIs if we think that they're going to get to Boyd, and Vegas is telling us they're going to get to Boyd. He's the cash game catcher on DraftKings. Now, I don't like playing guys like Lorenzo Cain just because he's a mid-priced, mid-tier outfielder, but he's traditionally been good against left-handed bats. But he's not making it into a lot of cash game builds, and he won't be very popular in cash games just because he's Lorenzo Cain of the Royals. They're not very popular this year. But a guy I think that will be very highly owned today is, I hate rostering this guy, but they price him where you almost have to play him if the weather holds. Shortstop Alcides Escobar. Escobar is not good. I mean, he's he swings at the first pitch every time. He pops out. He's got no home run power. It's just, I don't understand why he's hitting leadoff for any major league team at this point in his career, but he is. But he's only 2,400 on FanDuel, and on DraftKings he is. Is it the two? Is he? Yeah, he's 2.2K on DraftKings.
Yeah,
so hitting leadoff for a team projected to score 4.66 runs, you got to cut salary somewhere to pay up for a DeGrom or a Scherzer. Alcides is going to be super popular, even though he's not been good. You're just hoping that he gets on base, scores a run. I mean, the guy's hitting 180 this season with 0 home runs, 11 RBIs, and he's got 10 doubles, and that's it. He's got no extra base hits outside of 10 doubles.
Yeah, but I'm looking at the DraftKings pricing. I'm trying to figure out what happened. They had to have had a different starting pitcher plugged in because all the right-hand bats are super discounted and the left-hand bats are priced up. So they must have had, I don't know if they had, the pricing doesn't even make sense for Verlander, but they must have had Verlander plugged in as the starter today, and the lineup is priced as if they're facing Verlander.
Oh, that's right. I just saw Mike Moustakas is 4,100 on DraftKings. So you're not touching any of the left-hand bats in cash games, but those right-hand bats are severely discounted, and you're right. Something must have happened. So if you're playing cash games, Salvador Perez and Alcides Escobar are 2 great core pieces for a team that's projected to do well against a left-handed pitcher that Vegas says they will get to.
Yeah, that is an interesting one because even Bonifacio is still 3,600, which is weird that he would be priced up when all the other right-handers are way down. But yeah, that was a mistake on DraftKings, and I don't know how they messed that one up. But yeah, great spot there. A lot of cheap guys, especially for cash.
Yep. As far as Detroit bats, I'm really not interested in Detroit bats just because their price points. There's better spots at first base other than Miggy. There's let me rephrase that. I'm not paying for the expensive bats on Detroit, but if you get Andrew Romine hitting leadoff, he is only 2,600 on FanDuel, and on DraftKings, he's still got that dual eligibility as a second baseman or outfielder, and he's only 3,200. So if he's hitting leadoff, he is in play today. Yesterday, Dixon Machado hit leadoff, and he was super popular yesterday. And if he hits leadoff again today, he's still the minimum on FanDuel, and on DraftKings, he is 2,600 and has second base and shortstop eligibility as well. So I'm not paying for JD Martinez, Justin Upton, Biggie, or Victor Martinez. But in cash games, if I need to fill a spot and Andrew Romine or Dixon Machado is hitting leadoff, those guys are very much in play and will be popular in cash.
Yeah, I actually think Miguel Cabrera he's probably my number 1 first baseman, and JD is probably at least top 3 outfielder for me.
I can see the GPP appeal. They've got very, very high upside. Just as I mentioned, cash games, there's better pricing plays at that spot, so they won't be popular. And coming off yesterday's game, they're not cash game plays as far as today's slate is concerned. But I can definitely see your angle and the excitement in playing those big, powerful bats. Anything else on that game?
I think we should move on.
All right, our next game is the Los Angeles Dodgers and Hyun Jin Ryu going to St. Louis to take on the Cardinals and Carlos Martinez. The Cardinals are minus 130 favorites. The run total is 8. This is a game with 2 serviceable pitchers. How are you attacking it?
Well, I don't have a ton of interest in the hitters, but I don't have any interest in the pitchers either. I don't see any reason to pitch Carlos Martinez at his elevated price versus a team that's going to be mostly left-handed, and he's been below average this year versus left hand. He's been elite versus right-hand batters, but you do not want to pitch him versus a lefty-heavy lineup at all. Ryu, it's going to be mostly right-hand Cardinals lineup. I don't have any interest in Ryu. I really don't have any interest in this Cardinals team that just can't hit at all. There's nothing here for me. How about you?
I don't want to touch the pitchers. Carlos Martinez has been good, and he's been good in some tough spots this year, but he's just today there's too many good pitching spots, and his price point, it just doesn't make sense. If you're
Yeah,
gonna
I
pay
actually wouldn't
for
even play him at like 8K on DraftKings. Like, I think it's a terrible spot for him.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a good matchup against the Dodgers. There's better pitching across the board. He's just not showing up in any cash game builds. Now, hitting wise, there's a couple interesting spots just specifically on the Cardinals. Dexter Fowler will be hitting leadoff, hitting from his strong side of the platoon. Ryu has this season, he's allowed a 342 WOBA with 5 home runs in 28 innings. He's given up a hard hit of 31% and a fly ball of 34%. Now, he is a strikeout guy. He strikes out 23.3%. But Fowler is cheap. He's hitting leadoff. There's going to be some interest if you need to save money. On FanDuel, you're getting him for cheaper than even Tommy Pham, who also is in play, who will be hitting second. But Fowler is only 3,100 on DraftKings. And on FanDuel, I got that wrong. On FanDuel, he's only 3,100. On DraftKings, he's only 3,700. So he's going to be pretty popular hitting leadoff on a day you need to save salary. So don't be surprised if you run into a Dexter Fowler. Now, Tommy Pham is in a similar spot. He's more expensive than Fowler, but he gets a platoon split, and Pham has been secretly pretty good here. I don't know if a lot of people are going to be on him just because he's still sort of an unknown name. But Pham has a 362 WOBA and a 253 ISO against left-handed pitching. So I could see a mini stack of Fowler Pham in a lot of cash game builds just because you need to save salary. And if you plug those two in the outfield on DraftKings, you may even be able to do something tricky and go really high with your two starting pitchers because it's only 3,700 and 3,800.
Yeah,
There's some interest there.
Yeah, my issue is Ryu's actually struck out righties at a better clip this season so far, and he's been a little better versus righties, and I just have no interest in targeting him. If you take away his starts in Coors and his starts in Wrigley versus the Cubs, he's been very efficient versus everyone that he's faced, and I just don't see any reason to go to any of these batters in a pitching friendly environment in St. Louis today.
Moving on, our very next game, we have the Atlanta Braves and Jaime Garcia, who are playing at Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, taking on Jesse Chavez. The Angels are minus 125 favorites. The run total is 8. What spots are you looking at in this game?
This is pretty much, I have no interest in the pitching and no interest in the hitting. How about you?
Jaime Garcia is interesting to me as a starting pitcher too today in cash games. I wasn't originally on him, but the more I've sort of plugged into the industry today and the more I've sort of looked into it, he's somewhat popular and he's gaining momentum. You don't play him on FanDuel, but on DraftKings, as your pairing pitcher with DeGrom or Scherzer, he's only 7,600. He's been a serviceable pitcher. There's nothing about him that's standing out as I want to attack, or he's only got a 19% K rate. The Angels only strike out 19%. But who on the Angels is a scary bat at this point? No Mike Trout. Cameron Maybin is hurt. It's a decent don't get blown up spot. You cross your fingers and plug him in cash. I don't want to settle for Garcia, but I can see him being very popular. And as I mentioned, the talk around the industry, just from what I've gathered this morning, he's gaining momentum as the SP2 today.
Yeah, I mean,
do you have any thoughts on Garcia?
I don't see him getting blown up, but I'd rather pay up for Tanaka or gamble that Paxton's going to get a long enough leash. There's no interest for me. I understand the lineup is weak, but I think it's right-handed enough and strong enough versus him that I see him. I could see him throwing 6 innings, giving up 2 or 3 runs, and getting 4 or 5 strikeouts. That just doesn't do anything for me.
And that's sort of what people are hoping. That's why I said I don't like those plays where you just plug them in and hope they don't get blown up. I mean, that's a terrible cash game strategy, but it's a lot of people lean toward it so they can fit in the big bat with the high price A's.
And
I mean, he has a 53% ground ball rate, so
yeah.
it's
Yeah, he's always a tough pitcher to figure out. He's better than a lot of people assume he is, just because he is one of those pitchers though that can absolutely not have it and completely blow up. He's done it his whole career, so I think there's more risk than people are giving credit for. That's kind of why I wouldn't be very interested in him in cash, just because even versus a bad lineup, he can have some very, very bad starts. Those off-speed pitches can not locate for him and just hang over the middle, and he can just get hammered super hard.
well. Let's talk about Narrative Street real fast. Albert Pujols is on home run 599, and they're doing the thing where every time he comes to bat, they're cutting into coverage and showing his bat live because home run 600 is a big milestone in baseball. Pujols hasn't been great against left-handed pitching this season, but he's going to be hitting third, and he's going for that milestone. Do you think there's any weight into that tonight? He's got a decent price around the industry. You're not having to. He's only 3,800 on DraftKings, and on FanDuel, he is only 3,000.
Yeah, I don't see it. I mean, it's tough to hit homers off Garcia, in my opinion, especially in this stadium.
I agree. Just that it's our narrative of the day.
Yeah, I'm off it. I hope other people are on it, I guess. I'd much rather pay up.
Let's talk about Jesse Chavez. Jesse Chavez is a serviceable pitcher, but he gives up the home run. I've got one guy that's sticking out in cash games that's popping off the page, and one guy only for the Braves, and that's Matt Kemp. Kemp is hitting third. He hit a home run last night in the stadium. This season, Chavez is allowing a 369 WOBA with 9 home runs in 30 innings on a hard hit rate of 39.8%, a fly ball rate of 40%, and he's only striking out 18%. That's a 2.70 home run per 9. Kemp has got a 363 WOBA and a 226 ISO himself. And Kemp is priced very fairly across the industry. He's only 3,600 on FanDuel, and on DraftKings, he is coming in at only 3,900. So you could play a Kemp Fowler outfield and have lots of money to play with. Yeah. It's going to be a very popular build in cash games, especially Matt Kemp after he hit a home run last night.
Yeah, I never understood. There's a lot of people that have been on Chavez and a lot of different starts this year, and I never understood it. He ended up pitching halfway decent in those starts, and I really felt those guys got lucky. He has given up harder contact to right-hand bats, so I do agree with you on Kemp. There also is some interest in Matt Adams, who is super cheap on DraftKings at 3,300 too. Even though Chavez has a better ground ball rate and more soft contact induced versus lefties, Matt Adams he can crush versus any righty. So
it turned out to be a lot more interesting game the more I looked into it. And a guy that's going to come up as a very popular play that wasn't available yesterday in cash games. What do you know about Eric Young Jr., who's only 2,600 on DraftKings and he's only 2,100 on FanDuel? He hit leadoff yesterday with Cameron Maybin out. And you have to assume Maybin is still out today, that he will also hit leadoff today. He's a call-up. I don't know much about him.
Well, if I remember right, I think he was with the Rockies and then the Mets. He's a big-time speedster. And so if he gets on base, he should be a big-time threat to steal, which you love at his price. So now that you mention it, I guess I hadn't looked at him at all, but if he can...
He had 2 hits yesterday with a double, a run scored. He's a 32-year-old that got called up to fill in for the injured Mike Trout. But he everything I'm reading about him is he's a speedster. So
yeah, it looks like
if he gets on base and steals a base at that price, that's crushing.
Yeah, it looks like he stole 27 bases for the Rockies in 2011 and 38 for the Mets in 2013. Actually, that was a half a season. He had 46 total steals in 2013. I do remember picking him up in season longs for steal categories 3-4 years ago. He hasn't had much experience in the majors since 2013, but at his price, if you need a punted outfield, I don't hate it. I mean, he gets on base. It's a great spot, especially on
Yeah, he's
draft
going to be
games.
popular in cash games.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
I mean, they have a run total of 4.15, which isn't anything great, but he'll have the platoon advantage, and he's hitting leadoff. And if he gets on base and steals one bag, that is he fits a lot of builds. So keep in mind Eric Young Jr. when you're making your lineups today. Look at
yeah, and Garcia is not the greatest at holding runners. They have Flowers and Suzuki as catchers. Neither one of them is great at stopping stolen bases either. So I'm not worried at all about the left-hander keeping runners, keeping him at first base. I think it's a great spot for him to steal if he gets on.
Well, there you go. There's a guy that I had some interest coming into this, but after kind of talking him out, he's shooting up my consideration chart because that's a lot of money, a lot of salary left over to work with. And if this is a great spot for steals, we used to always target the Braves last year for steals. I could see that being a very popular cash play.
I wouldn't say it's a great spot for steals, but it's an above average spot.
It was last year because
no, the catchers
who was the catcher last year?
It was Flowers for the most part, if I remember right. Was it, or was Flowers on a different team last year? It wasn't Suzuki because he was with the Twins.
Yeah,
but Suzuki's terrible.
But
Garcia's
got 2 games left.
Yeah.
Let's go with Colorado Rockies and Antonio Senzatella. Today they're at Seattle. It's a home and home series, so they flip. This game is in Seattle, and they're taking on James Paxton. Now, Seattle is a minus 170 favorite. The game is 8 run total. This is a very interesting spot for cash games. If you don't mind, I want to talk about Paxton for just a moment. Paxton is a guy who he is priced at only $8,800 on FanDuel and $8,200 on DraftKings. And I haven't read anything about him being on a pitch limit. I'm going to have to keep doing my research. But he is coming off the DL today. This is going to be his first start since May 2nd. He is the second biggest favorite of the slate at minus 170. He's a lefty that strikes out 24.5% of batters. He's allowed a 112 WOBA to left-handed bats, a 238 WOBA to right-handed bats. He's 3-0 on the season with a 1.43 ERA, 4 quality starts, and 6 games started. He's good, and if he can go 6 innings and give up 1-2 runs with the strikeout per inning at 8,200, I'm very interested as my SP2 on DraftKings. How are you approaching James Paxton? Have you heard anything about him being on a leash or limit or any sort of restriction?
No, I haven't. I searched Twitter. I checked all the beat writers and everything, and they were talking about absolutely nothing to do with the Mariners. I haven't seen anyone mention anything, but I would bet a lot of money that he is on a very strict pitch count. I'm a huge Paxton fan. I picked him extremely early in my season-long draft. I think he has a chance to be a top 5 pitcher in baseball in his career going forward here. He's elite in every category that I like, but I think because of that, they are going to be super, super, super cautious with him. I can't imagine him pitching more than 70 or 80 pitches today. I don't think they're going to let him just go nuts. And I think the Mariners are going to get to Antonio a bit, and so there'll be some runs there, and I just don't think there's any reason for the Mariners to risk the future of their franchise getting him rehurt. I think they're going to bring him back very, very carefully, and I just don't see him throwing more than 80, 90 pitches for probably 2 or 3 starts.
So that's something to very, very importantly pay attention to today throughout my research. I'm going to be looking at that. It was a forearm issue, so you're right. They're probably going to do their best to protect him. And he's at a price point where you are paying $100 more than Masahiro Tanaka. And if you believe in Tanaka, his K abilities, and to get through that lineup in Baltimore, you just take the guy that doesn't have a restriction on him. or a potential restriction. So that's sort of the cash game viewpoint there. What about hitters? Are you seeing anybody that you want to attack with? I don't want to attack Paxton at all, but what about the Mariners against Cincinnati?
Yeah, I've noticed in the Rockies, the Mariners. I don't mind many of them, but they're not my favorites. I do think they get to them. I mean, you always love Robinson Cano, Cruz, Seager here, even Segura, but they're all priced up pretty high, except for Seager's at a decent discount on DraftKings. But just they're pricey, and I have other spots I'd rather attack. How about you?
Kyle Seager is the only one that's really stepping out because on DraftKings he's only 3,700, so he makes for a decision between him and Todd Frazier at that price point. Because as I mentioned a few times through this cast, there's just not a lot of third base options you want to pay for today, and he is just one of the guys that he makes sense. He's cheap enough, he's been decent enough. And if Nelson Cruz is out, he'll move up a spot and be hitting cleanup today. All indication was that Nelson Cruz left yesterday's game with tightness, and the manager said after the game that he should be able to play tonight. But I don't understand why you would be removed after the first inning of the game yesterday and be ready to play today. So if he gets moved up a spot to the cleanup spot, that even boosts his profile more for me. I could see Kyle Seager. Oh, he's the same price on FanDuel as well. So Kyle Seager, Todd Frazier becomes your cash game third base play if that happens.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, I was saying I don't like Cruz as much as I originally thought. I'm looking up some of Antonio's numbers. Yeah, I don't know. He's a tough guy to figure out for me anyway. But yeah, I would lean Seager as my favorite of the lineup.
But Seattle bats in cash games aren't going to be popular because it's the park shift. You're going to Safeco, and Rockies bats won't be popular because of the matchup and the park shift as well. So you're not going to run into a lot of stuff here except maybe Kyle Seager.
Yeah.
On to our last game. We have the Washington Nationals and Max Scherzer taking on the San Francisco Giants and Matt Cain. The Nationals are minus 160 favorites. The run total is 7.5. Bryce Harper has accepted his suspension, so he will not be in the lineups. But this is one of the decision points you're going to have to make in cash games. I assume in GPP. How are you leaning? I know you and I have discussed this. We like DeGrom a lot. How are you treating Scherzer?
Yeah, I like DeGrom a lot more. I think we'll see 5 lefties in this lineup for the Giants, and as we've discussed, Max is well below average for his left-hand bats. Obviously, a lot of his problems are giving up homers to left-hand bats, and that is almost completely neutralized by the park. So you always love Max, even if he was versus 8 lefties. I mean, you'd still have some interest in him in this park, but there's still, at his price, you want everything to be perfect. It's a pesky Giants lineup. It's got a lot of lefties. I think they're able to get at him. I don't think he has the huge strikeout upside that he showed against his last start versus the Padres. I just have no interest in Max today. I hope the field likes to go there. I hope the field loves to chase the Giant Stadium narrative, because you will see pitchers every time they're pitching in Giant Stadium for good reason. They're much higher owned. So I hope the field goes there and lets us get DeGrom at much lower ownership. For hitters, I don't want to attack any hitters for the Giants. For the Nationals, I have a lot of interest. I think this lineup is going to be able to get a lot of hits. You're not going to see a ton of homers, so it's another one of those teams where I like them more on FanDuel than DraftKings, just because homers aren't as important in your stacks on FanDuel as they are in DraftKings. How about you?
It's kind of a lookover game as far as hitters go. Matt Cain's been decent at home. He's not somebody I've looked to attack when he's in San Francisco.
Yeah.
No Bryce Harper in the lineup. It becomes a lot less threatening as far as I'm not worried about. He's going to be facing a lot of right-handed bats, and if he gets by Daniel Murphy, I'm not really afraid of that offense.
I don't have him as very good versus right-handers either. Nothing. I mean, just I think there's going to be a lot of singles and doubles.
And that's the thing about this park is Trey Turner will have some popularity in cash games because he can get on and he can steal. He's the one guy that I'm not afraid he'll steal a base on Posey.
You know what actually could be a great thing for Turner is Posey might get the day off here versus Max. They might, it's a great time to give him the day off, and that would upgrade the steal upside.
He stole yesterday.
Yeah, but I mean that would even upgrade the steal upside if Posey's not in the lineup.
Yeah, totally agree there. And shortstop is a position that there's nobody that's sticking out. So I could see a scenario where people either go all the way up and pay for a Trey Turner, or you go all the way down and pay for the Alcides Escobar or Andrew Romine or Dixon Machado on DraftKings. But Max Scherzer, the industry buzz this morning has been very interesting. A lot of the things that I listen to and read and go to start my research and continue my research, they have Max Scherzer rated higher than Jacob deGrom, and I don't understand the thought of it at all. Scherzer is a minus 160 favorite, so that's worse than deGrom. Scherzer's on the road. I get the park is neutralizing of home runs, but he's allowed a 320 WOBA with 6 home runs and 33.1 innings to left-handed bats. And Brandon Crawford, he can take one deep. Brandon Belt could take one deep in that park. It's just not something I'd rather take the guy at home against the more strikeout-prone Brewers. The Giants only strike out 19.4% of the time, and even though Max Scherzer has a 31% K rate this year, you got to factor that in. At San Francisco, it's going to be a lot more difficult than Jacob deGrom at home versus the Brewers.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning his K rate is 45.6% versus right-hand batters. It is 22.5% versus left-hand batters. So, I mean, it is an absolutely ridiculous split. And if they get 5 left-hand batters, that reduces his strikeout upside immensely.
So I'm glad that we are on the same page here. I think Scherzer is sort of a trap when it comes to cash games. Just take the discount on deGrom, use that extra money, especially on DraftKings, where $1,300 is a lot of extra salary to upgrade a bat. So for me, it's deGrom clearly ahead. Of course, things could change throughout the day, but there's just no reason in cash games to pay the extra salary for Max when you got deGrom in just the same potential upside spot.
Yeah, I'd say for me, if they both were priced the same, I would still have deGrom quite a bit higher than Max.
That's a good point.
With the discount, it's just not even close for me. I want deGrom, and I hope people play Max.
That's a great point to bring up. That is the slate as a whole. 9 games. Anything you want to add before we go to our player draft, just on things to look out for in GPPs today?
Yeah, I think we both agree we have deGrom as our top starter by far. For me, I'm looking at Tanaka as my SP2. And, I would love Paxton. It's an absolute great matchup. You actually like a lot of righties versus him because that just ups his K upside. But I think they're going to be super careful with him. So for me, the top 2 pitchers are deGrom and Tanaka. Tanaka's obviously super risky. He can give up 5 homers in the first inning. That's not even a joke. Other than that, I think we covered, for me, my favorite hitting games, our favorite stacks is probably the Red Sox and then the Tigers.
For cash games, you're going to be facing off against deGrom or Scherzer on FanDuel. On DraftKings, it's going to be deGrom or Scherzer plus SP2. And SP2 is kind of tricky. You've got Tanaka. You've got a Paxton who is probably going to be on a restriction. Hopefully it'll come out before lock.
Well, actually, hopefully it won't, and they're just off it, and everyone else let them play him at 70 pitches.
Fair enough. But it's tough on DraftKings to figure out SP2 because that's why I said Jaime Garcia was gaining popularity. So, you don't want to pay up for Carlos Martinez at 10-9, Chris Archer at 11-3 on the road in Texas. You don't want to spend that much, and there's just very, very limited ways to get to Max Scherzer at 13-3 if you're playing DeGrom at 12. So I don't know how you're going to have to figure out SB2 on DraftKings, but plug in DeGrom on both sides, build from there. Stacks to target in cash games, the Boston Red Sox against Pelfrey in Chicago, Tampa Rays against the 32-year-old making his starter's debut in Texas. The Yankees, I'm really a big fan of their right-handed bats today in Baltimore. And the Royals right-handed bats, specifically on DraftKings, you get a good discount on, and they can serve as good core pieces. You could plug in a DeGrom, a Salvador Perez, and a Alcides Escobar and have a nice little core to build from in cash games. On to the player draft for today. Yesterday, our initial run-through, my top pick, Miguel Sano, got scratched after lock. Everyone that played yesterday got to experience the joy of a panicked swap that ended up burning me a bit yesterday. But today's anew. You want to go first on of all the hitters today, who is your top choice?
And I will say, when a guy gets scratched, you can tweet at me your replacement. It didn't matter because you still crushed me with Morales got a homer, and that was enough to beat my three guys combined. So you're up 1-0. My first pick is going to be Corey Dickerson.
Corey Dickerson in Texas is a good spot. I'm going to go a little off the edge here. I'm going to go with Aaron Judge facing off against Kevin Gossman in Baltimore. I really like his home run upside today, and I think the Yankees get to him, and I think he has a huge game with lots of RBI upside. My next pick, I'm going to go back to the well with a guy who is very affordable on both sides, who I think is going to be on base quite a bit. He has really been heating up lately, and that's Kevin Kiermaier in that same game in Texas for the Tampa Bay Rays. I'm going to go Kevin Kiermaier as my second pick.
I'm going to go with Miguel Cabrera, who's my favorite first baseman. And then I'm going to go with another first baseman. I'm going to go Jose Abreu. I think he gets one out of the park today.
Abreu against Pomerantz, the old lefty masher. My final pick, I'm going to go kind of off the board here. I'm going lots of home run hitters. I really think this guy has a monster game today. I like Matt Kemp against Jesse Chavez in Los Angeles. I think hitting third, he's going to hit a home run today. I really like his matchup and to get to Chavez as the road team here.
Yeah, we'll probably have to add a thing to the draft just so we're not always just picking the expensive guys. Because I like you going off the board there with Kemp, making it much different than just picking the high projected guys. So we might have to add a little variation to this going forward.
We can figure it out as we go. I really wish Aaron Judge would quit hitting home runs all the time so he could drop down a little bit.
He's ridiculous. It's fun to watch, but frustrating too because I've been fading him for the most part.
Well, that about sums up today's slate. Thanks for tuning in. As always, be on the lookout for Bluff's place, or was it Hitters to Be?
The place to be. Seinfeld reference.
Place to be.
Seinfeld reference. When they're
look out for Bluff's.
I would say when George's father puts a pool table in his old room, they call it the place to be.
That's good stuff. Be on the lookout for that article. Tom's take will come out as well this afternoon. Again, thanks for joining us on our On the RotoRadar podcast. Hopefully tonight is a great 9-game slate. Hopefully you're able to use this information, construct some awesome lineups, make some great pivots to the content we provide. And as always, good night and good skill.
Did you like today's show? Did you find this information to be helpful? Give us a shout out on any social media platform, Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Of course, don't forget to use the hashtag RotoRadarMLB in your post. Every time you use that hashtag, you'll get a ticket to our $20,000 raffle in July. You heard that right. $20,000. We appreciate every single one of you for being RotoRadar members. On the RotoRadar will be available for members only Monday to Friday for the remainder of the MLB season. As always, good night and good skill. more information on our raffles, head over to our website, www.rotoradar.net.